So this one's from Gundawin. Want to know where to buy to have good capital gain. That's all I got for that question there. So I guess Ian's prepared this one for me. So I guess we all would like to know where to buy for capital gain. For those of you who maybe haven't tuned in many times before to the mastermind class and have a good understanding about Ripehouse or the algorithm. So the Ripehouse algorithm, that has been something that's been around now since 2011, and it's been constantly refined and tweaked along the way. And essentially what it does, it reviews every single suburb across the country, across 26 key data points, and with machine learning, essentially, think of the R score, which is the algorithm score, as that is the dish you are trying to serve up, and that dish we're trying to serve up is for capital growth. The R score is a kind of a leading indicator on that. And the 26 ingredients that go into our recipe are these 26 data points at the top here. But just like any recipe, they all have different ratios and weighting scores of which ones are more important than one another. The prime indicators are normally, things like proximity to utilities and amenities, population growth versus supply, projects coming through, and, making sure we drill down onto the right street. But the R score really just helps us drill down in terms of where we should initially focus our attention on from just purely from a data perspective. So initially when we come through, we look at every suburb, we then refine that down to the top 10%, because whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's property investing, you've always got a performance bell curve where your bottom end of your bell curve are going to perform quite poorly. And in property terms, your properties or suburbs, I should say, that perform quite poorly are typically going to be in areas that are prone to, things like mining, tourism, agricultural hubs, where the industry slows down or closes down and you lose a heap of your value overnight. Then you're going to have kind of 60 to 80% of areas which just follow the general macro economy, and they're just going to do, if it's rising or falling, interest rates, war, oil prices, unemployment, a lot of locations are just going to follow the general economy. And then you've got your top 10% of performance, which is ideally where we want to be. And then what we'll do from there is, once we've narrowed that down just purely from a data perspective, this is then where we manually intervene, because data is all well and good, as we went through before, just with a couple of little blip anomalies there. Good investing is about risk mitigation. So we then manually intervene, and basically 80% of the locations that are approved just from the data side get rejected. So I think there's a few people on here that have done our academy previously, and they've got just access to the blanket R scores without the approved locations. But this is essentially where we come in and use our experience. And those 80% of suburbs that fail, they're typically failing either because they're either in areas prone to cyclone, flood, bushfire, then in areas which have a lot of supply risk, potentially areas that lack employment diversity. We don't want to put our eggs into one basket where it's just all relying on one or two industries, because if it does that, it can go to zero overnight. Areas that don't really have any consistent population coming through or a lot of supply, lack of projects. And then the other thing is, we're okay with large regional areas, but tiny towns in the middle of nowhere are not. So it ends up getting us to around about 250 odd suburbs at any one time that are approved from a data R score, and then also from the manual verification. And then I guess from a results perspective, because it's something I get asked a lot. So this is one thing to know. This is pre and post COVID, which is really, really important. So if we're talking about the purchases that we've done in 2018. So if somebody came in 2018 and purchased a property with us, then they've essentially averaged around about a 10.28% compounding growth over that period of time. So that means for that, say, now 6-year period that you've been holding the property, your $500,000 property is closer to $900,000. And it's been obviously stronger in the last few years because we had a very big COVID spike over there. But typically what you will see for property growth cycles is they will last somewhere between 3 to 7 years on average. Though there are always exceptions to the rule. Like we can see that Newcastle one before has been really, really super consistent. If we go into, say, back into Ellenbrook as an example, Ellenbrook essentially did 14 years or so of nothing. If anything, it went sideways and backwards. And one could make the argument that it didn't really start doing anything until around about 2020, late 2021, 2022. So it's only had a very short window. It might have a few more strong years and then start to go through a plateau cycle. So in terms of the areas to where to target, for I guess the respect of our paying clients, I can't divulge exactly where we're buying, but to give you a bit of insight, even kind of track record, and I've had to blur out some of these locations from previously, more of a numbers perspective. But if we were to drill down where have we purchased really, really heavily previously, and this probably brings home even more so about having a long track record of outperforming the market. So really heavily in Adelaide in 2018, and it's been no secret the last couple of years that the Adelaide market's been one of the strongest performing markets, and the same goes for Ipswich. Then we were buying fairly heavily in the Devonport market, Toowoomba extremely heavily, and that's been a very, very strong performer. Then Rockingham in WA, Gladstone in 2023, Rockhampton in 2023. We're starting to buy those locations as well in 2022, some 2021, but they were more heavier in those periods of time. A lot of that's probably also tied in with people's serviceability getting lower over those other years. So what's ended up happening is that we've had more clients just geared towards more affordable, higher yielding properties over that period of time as well. But for us, it's just about making sure we pick the location and get our clients the right result. And that's why we really feel strongly at the moment about the regional Victorian area at the moment as well, without disclosing exactly where.